Well, good morning. It's good to have you guys today. My name is, if you don't know me yet, my name is Chris. I'm one of the pastors here. It's so good to be able to share with you this morning. You know, I'm sure you're going to be able to relate, but I was thinking as I was preparing for the message this week, I was thinking to myself, you may even have seen what the title of the message is if you grab the notes, Freedom from Offense. And I was thinking about that. You don't have to look very far to see someone offended nowadays, right? Go to a break room and one of the employees may be offended by the company decision, or turn on the TV, right? Or scroll on your phone, or how about this one? Go to a family holiday dinner and you'll probably get loads of that going on, right? We live in a reactionary society where we can be consumed, literally consumed by offense. It's easy, though, to look at others, but if we're not careful, especially since living offended seems kind of normal and we're surrounded by it, it doesn't often take much for us to be offended either. And let's take this a step deeper. Let's talk about our faith for a moment. As Christ followers, God has asked us to live differently than the world and to have a value system that is different than the world. And He's told us to have a strong faith and a personal faith, so it can be, since the world lives differently than us, I think it can be a real battle for Christians they really have to battle with living offended. And if we're not careful, Christians could live offended at others or offended at the world. It's like it's me against the world, right? One trap of offense is that it often justifies treating and viewing others poorly in ways that likely hurt the heart of God and others. I mean, again, just think about our Christian faith for a moment. God's not wanting us to live offended, but we often do. It's like, they don't value what I value. They don't have the same opinions that I do. They live way differently than me. They vote differently. They think differently on social issues. Man, they think differently than the Bible and God's Word. And before you know it, God has asked us to have a strong faith, but along with that strong faith, He doesn't want us to live offended either, and we often have to battle that. Not only that, we all have people we're close to that offend us and hurt us. Don't stare them down in this moment, but all of us have people that have offended us or hurt us, right? We have. And so whether we're offended by our closest relationships or by the broader world, it's me against the world. As a pastor once said, you might want to write it down, being offended is inevitable. Living offended is a choice. I'll say that again. Being offended is inevitable. We'll all have times where we're going to be hurt, where we're going to be offended. That can be normal. But living offended is a choice. Like I said, all of us have times where we're hurt. That's normal. But how do we choose, especially as Christ followers, where God has asked us to live differently, where He's asked us to have strong convictions, personal convictions? How do we choose to not live offended and have it control our lives? How do we gain freedom from offense? Because God doesn't want us to view and look and treat people poorly. He wants us to do other things when it comes to people. We're going to talk about that. So let's go to the Bible to find out how we can gain freedom from offense. In Proverbs, it says this. Why don't you read it with me, actually? Ready? 1, 2, 3. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. Say that last part with me again. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. So number one, if you're going to be someone that gains freedom from offense, number one, pass by. pass by. When possible, God encourages us to overlook an offense. And one of the meanings of the word offense is to pass by. He's encouraging us to pass by offenses. Now, why would he do that? Does it mean that he doesn't care about your feelings? Does it mean that he doesn't care that you're hurt? Does it mean that he wants you to stuff it or avoid it? No, to none of those things. We'll even actually talk about some of those things. But here's why he encourages us to pass by offenses. Because he knows how easy it is to stay and circle it. I can't believe what they did. Man, they were so disrespectful. They were so unloving. How could they do this to me? My boss did this. My spouse did that. My friends did this. My kids did this. He knows how easy it is to just play the recorder in our minds and hearts. And instead of passing by and moving on, we're living here. And he doesn't want that for us. Because when that happens, we can become trapped by our offenses. I mean, think of some of the traps that can happen because of offense. People who are consistently angry. People who are consistently on edge. People who are resentful, like, people are out to get me. Or again, it's me against the world. Or instead of believing the best of people, mistrust and suspicion leads to us assuming offense even when other people didn't intend that. Sometimes we treat innocent people in our life poorly. I've had Robin call that out at me before, like, hey, let me let you in on a little secret. I'm not them. Stop treating me like them. I know you're frustrated at this person, but I'm not them. Can you actually treat me nicely? Because if you don't, I'm going to have an offense that I'm either tempted to stay by or I'm going to have to help the Lord help me pass it by, right? So offense can even affect how we treat other people in our lives. Do you see why God encourages us to pass by? He sees how powerful it is to let go. And he sees the traps you avoid and the freedoms that can be yours. When I was younger, I remember as I was preparing for the message, I recalled this story. I had someone in my family who stole from me, stole something that I really liked. And one day I was looking for it. I'm like, the last time I saw it was right here. The last time I touched it, saw it, it was right here. Where did it go? And it had some value to it. I really liked it. And I still remember the day. I was recalling it this week when my family member called me up on the phone and said, hey, I have something stupid that I need to admit to you. I stole this from you. And I had a decision to make in that moment. And please don't hear this because sometimes I choose poorly. Thank God in this situation I didn't, but I had a decision in that moment. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this family member who I love, who we have a good relationship with, that they stole from me. Like they stole something personal from me. They did this against me. I had to choose in that moment. Was I going to stay in that, or was I going to gain freedom by passing by? And in that situations, I've made many bad choices in my life when it comes to this. In that situation, I did decide to pass by. And I was actually thinking about it this week. I was like, man, thankfully I'll never know, but I wondered this week how my relationship with that person would have been different if I wouldn't have overlooked the offense. I really was thinking about that, like, thank God I don't know, but I want you to start thinking about that. How would your life look different if you decide to pass by? How would your relationship with your boss look differently if every decision wasn't a personal attack and offense against you? Or how would your life look differently if you decided not to? Not that it's wrong to scroll on your phone, but sometimes we can get consumed by offense and then it affects us in other ways. Or you could keep going, the spouse, the friendship. How would your life look differently if you decided to pass by? Not to ignore or avoid, we're going to talk about that, but to actually pass by. And actually, that's my next thought. Notice it, let me be very, very clear. It says to overlook an offense, not stuff or avoid an offense. There's a huge, huge difference. You see, one of the reasons something offends us, typically, is because it hurts us. And God isn't expecting us to stuff or avoid our hurt. He cares about our hurts. He wants us to give him our hurts. Because when we avoid and stuff, that has its own sets of traps. And I'm here to tell you today, there's a way to acknowledge to God, to yourself, or even to the person that hurt you about your feelings and still pass by offenses. So let's go to the Bible to see how we can do that. Jesus is going to be talking here, and it's going to help us discover, how can we do that? How can we still pass by, but still be able to share ourselves and our feelings to others? Again, this is Jesus speaking, and he asks a really good question, and I want you to be asking this question to yourself. In Matthew 7, he says this. He says, hey, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me change you, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? So number 2, if you're going to be someone that gains freedom from offense, work on yourself first. Now, notice Jesus didn't say you can't go to them at all. He's just saying, hey, work on yourself first. Because you know what often happens with offenses? I wonder if you're this way, because I can be this way. We often think the opposite of what Jesus said here. We think, okay, I know I'm not perfect. We have a speck in our eye. Yes, I know I have some small things to deal with, but them, what they did to me, that was so big. I just did this small, tiny thing to them. I just said this one little word, and then they hulk out on me. They're the ones that do the big thing. They're the ones that offend. Sometimes it is big. Oftentimes, though, this is really important. Oftentimes, though, because it feels bad to us, what others do to us feels worse than what we do to others. And sometimes we don't fully realize the ramifications, impact we have on how we treat others until, guess what? Someone treats us in a similar way. I've had that happen several times before, where I'm thinking my part in the relationship conflict is small, and theirs is so big. Oh my gosh, it's like 95% them, 5% me. Maybe 90% them, 10% me. Oh man, it's typically on them, right? And then I have someone else treat me similarly to how I treat that person. I'm like, oh crap, my part was bigger than I thought it was, right? Have you ever been there? I know I have. I've had that happen to me before. Now, to be clear, when Jesus tells us to look at ourselves, he's not trying to condemn us or dismiss what others may have done to us. But he is wanting us to see that we have things to work on too. And the things we have to work on could be bigger than we think. We can hurt others too. In fact, listen to what he says next in Matthew 7. He says, you hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Notice he doesn't say avoid it. He just says, hey, work on yourself first. And then you will see clearly to help your brother or sister as well. Now, very important, Jesus wasn't setting a standard of perfection. You can't address anyone until all your planks are gone. You have to be perfect to address someone else. That's impossible. We're all works in progress. But I think one of the reasons it's good to go inward is so we address people from an angle of humility and grace instead of from an angle of superiority and judgment. To address them from an angle of patience, because isn't that what we'd want? See, when we address ourselves as well and go to ourselves first and also have humility and grace towards others, it can help us see more clearly. You know, what they did, it did hurt me, but I know I hurt people too. And if I hurt someone, I'd want them to pass by my offense. I'd want them to forgive me. I'd want them to give me grace. God, can you help me to pass by this offense as well? Will you help me to let it go? I'm still going to address them. You haven't told me to avoid it or stuff it. I'm going to address them. And I will share how this has affected me. But I'll do it with grace and gentleness and respect, knowing that I can do similar things at times. Now, speaking of addressing the person who hurt you or offended you, here's more wisdom from Jesus on how to be free from offense. In Matthew 18, Jesus says this: if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So number 3, if you're going to be someone that gains freedom from offense, take it private before you take it public. Take it private before you take it public. As I said earlier, it's important to gain freedom from offense through passing by the offenses of others and not stay focused on it, and the record player going in your mind and the record player going in your soul, and you're like, oh, it's just starting to really build up. That said, sometimes it's not possible just to pass by. In fact, I often tell people, hey, as often as you can, pass by people's offenses, because they're not perfect, you're not perfect. But if you're starting to get to a point where you can't pass by and you're feeling resentment in your heart, it is time to go to them. It is time to address them. Some things do need to be addressed in order to bring freedom. And Jesus gives us wisdom on how it should be addressed. And he encourages us to keep it private first before we take it public. But here's the problem. Most people take it public first. We all have the temptation to take it public first. We share it with someone else. You are not going to believe what this person did to me. You want to hear? You want to hear? You want to hear? Okay, yeah, let's talk about it. So we share it with someone else. Or some people blast it over social media, right? Sometimes the last person we go to is the one that hurt us. And even if someone doesn't take it public, some stuff or avoid it. And like I talked about, that is not good either. But do you know this? Not always. But you know, sometimes if we were to practice this one thing, taking it private before we take it public, do you know that a lot of times we'd find out that person didn't even intend to offend? I've had that happen on multiple occasions. I've had people come to me and said, you said this, and you're like, sometimes I'm like, I didn't say this. I don't know where you heard that from. And then there's other times where like, I did say that, but I didn't mean it the way you intended it. Thank you for coming to me. And then everything works itself out. I've had the same thing the other way, where I go to people and I was like, this is how I took it. And they're like, oh my gosh, thanks for coming to me. That's not how I meant it. So oftentimes, taking it private before we take it public, we find out we don't even have an issue in the first place. Right? But even if it's true, here's my question. Even if it is true, How are you going to work it out and gain freedom if you don't go to them? How are you going to gain freedom if you don't go to them? Now, there can be exceptions. If someone's abusing you, please, 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 for your safety, you need to go to someone else. And I also realize it's important to gain wisdom from others. But the goal behind it isn't how bad this person is. The goal is, can I have some advice because I want to try to work this out? It's so different. While going directly to the person doesn't always work it out, going to them has a greater chance of working it out than if you don't go to them. You have a 0% chance of working it out if you don't go to them, right? So going to them increases your chances of it working out greatly. And if it doesn't work out by going to them, Jesus encourages you to take someone else along with you the next time. Not so you gang up on the person, just so there's that third party there to maybe help. If that doesn't work, Jesus encourages you to go to the church. Maybe there's some pastors or some elders that can help. Pastors and elders don't know everything. They don't have a magic wand by any means. But it can be helpful to have that third person there or a few other people just to help. Now again, to be clear, these steps don't guarantee it'll work out. But at least you've attempted a few things that can help bring freedom to you instead of this. Oh my gosh, the more I think about it, the angrier I get. I can't believe that they did this to me. God says, hey, your life is more important. You have more productive things than to surround yourself and live by offense. And I will give you some proactive things that you can do that can help. You know, really, whether it's one-on-one or things we hear or see out there, there's some potentially very offensive things to deal with. There really, really is. Again, especially if you consider our faith and how God has asked us to live differently and to think differently. So there's going to be things out there that are potentially very offensive to us. So how do we gain freedom from offense instead of being consumed and trapped by it? Listen in. Proverbs 10. Hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers over, say it with me. Oh, say it like you believe it. All wrongs. Covers over all wrongs. Not just the ones that you don't even think are that big of a deal. Like, okay, those aren't even that big of a deal on me anyway, so I'll cover over them. Even the ones that hurt and offend, while God's not asking you to ignore stuff or avoid your feelings, He's telling us that with the help of God through love, that we can cover over those wrongs. Seriously, if this is the only thing you hear today, I really hope this speaks to your spirit. This is probably the most important point of the message, because this is where God comes into play and works within and helps us win within. Number 4, if you're going to be someone that gains freedom from offense, ask God to grow your love. You want freedom from offense? Because we're all going to face it. Ask God to grow your love for others. Jesus, in a world surrounded by offense, in a world that's so reactionary, help me be the one to love others. Guys, love is powerful because it has the tendency to cover, not expose. Instead of being ruled, again, there's nothing wrong with being hurt. We're all going to be offended at times. But instead of being ruled by our offense or ruled by our hurt, love looks to graciously cover. Isn't it cool that when Jesus asks, when we ask Jesus to forgive us, aren't you just really glad that He covers us instead of exposes us? Isn't that amazing? He covers us instead of exposes us. In fact, I don't know if you've ever thought about this before. Jesus covers us so well that God doesn't even see our offenses. Wow! The God that sees it all, there's no wrong that slips past God. He knows it all and sees it all. And Jesus covers us so well when we ask for forgiveness that God's like, I don't see any of them. My love covers, not exposes. That's why the gospel is so great. That's why it's considered good news. Jesus, will you please forgive me? Sure. My love and forgiveness is so complete. It's so complete that I will cover every wrong. So much so that the Heavenly Father won't even see any of your offenses or wrongs. He will only see you through the lens of love. Wow, that's such great news. Love covers. And because God is love, He can help you win within by helping you love others too. Step by step, He can free you from offense, giving you the strength to pass by. Man, I really feel like at least circling around this a few times, but I know that's not good for my heart and my spirit. It's not good for anybody else, most likely. God, give me the strength to pass by. If I can't pass by it, give me the strength to go and take it private instead of public. He can give you a love that sees people the way God does, as people who are covered or a person who needs covering from Jesus. Freedom from offense. Do you know why I know this? And it's not just something to fill the message until we leave in a few minutes. Do you want to know why I know this? And it's not just some words on a page from this thing called the Bible. Because God has done this in my life. Robin and I had a family member that did something very, very egregious. And doesn't matter about the details, but it was very, very egregious. The church world would think it was, and so would the regular world. It was a very egregious act. And I remember when I first found out, like, oh my gosh, whoa, that's serious. And I remember the times where I'd be around, and now this person asked for forgiveness, and Jesus really changed their life around, and they really did. They like, if they were here today, if they had the courage to stand up here, they would say, yeah, it's not a debate. It's like, yeah, I messed up, and I messed up really, really badly. I betrayed a lot of people in my life. But they asked for forgiveness. And I remember when we first started being around them after I found out about this, and all I could see was the offense. I was like, it's so hard not to think about what they've done when I'm around them. Man, this is so difficult. I can't believe they did this. And then there was times where I was like, I don't want to see, I don't want to remember what they've done. It was difficult for a while. But guys, I remember how Jesus slowly started to change me and Robin's heart. And to the point to where there was times after when he started really changing us where I was surprised. I was like, oh my gosh, I hung out with him and I didn't even think about that offense. Thank you, God, that you changed my view of that person. And there became a time where it separated from my view of that person so much that man, the love that we had for this person, when most would just say, yeah, this is what you did, you're kind of defined by this offense now. And I already said this, I've had lots of times in my life where I've made the wrong choice and decided to walk around it, stew on it, carry it, But I'm so thankful. This has nothing to do with me. I'm so thankful that Jesus changed my heart and view towards this person. And it wasn't even just neutral. I remember getting to the point where it's like, wow, you've given me such a love for this family member. So this is not just theory. This is not just something that is talked about in the Bible. This is what Jesus does. He frees us from our own offenses, and then he helps free us from the offenses of others so that we're loving them, wanting to cover them instead of expose them and take them public. And so I know firsthand what it's like to see a very egregious offense, but through the love of God and growing my heart, growing my wife's heart, on the other side of that, seeing Jesus really do a good thing and restore someone and redeem them, at least in our eyes. And I'm so glad that he did. He's not, this person isn't even alive anymore, but we're so glad that we had these times to be able to spend with him before he went. But I'm here to say that didn't come from us. Left on our own devices, we'd just be doing this. Even if we wanted to, like, man, I'm so sick of thinking about all this. Left to our own devices, we're just going to keep circling. But as Jesus grew our love, he's the one that helped us. And step by step, he can do the same for you. Freeing you from offense by helping you love others and seeing them the way God sees them. You know, here at OB1, we often give answers because answers are important. And I tried to give you a few answers today that will help free you from offense. But we also believe that questions are very effective because it often helps you get to the heart of the matter. And so here's a few questions to be thinking about right now and even this week as you're driving or connecting with God or maybe connecting with other people in your life. Number one, if you're currently trapped by offense, which, guys, we all are at times, of the three, pass by, work on yourself first, or take it private before you take it public. Which one is a next step towards freedom for you? Number two, is there an area of your life where you live offended? Again, I just said, guys, we all have areas of our lives where we do. So it's not shameful to say, yeah, I live offended in this way, and this is how I want God to help. If so, does it cause you to view and or treat others properly? Or poorly, I should say. Again, I want to talk to Christians for a moment. I think that's most of us, so we're safe. We know that God has asked us to have a personal and strong faith. But that faith was never justification to view and treat others poorly just because they have a faith that's different, or even if they don't believe in God, or even if they don't like God. In fact, Jesus actually told us, you're going to have trouble in this world. And one of the reasons we have trouble in this world at times is because we're going to be offended and hurt at times. That's the trouble we're going to have. And Jesus never says, well, if they offend you or hurt you because of your faith, you have my permission to treat them and view them poorly. Actually, he says quite the opposite. People are going to know you by the love you have for them. Right? People are going to know that I'm real, that I really can transform, that God really does love, because you choose to love people even when they at times offend you because of their beliefs or their values or the way they live. They will know that you're my disciples, not because of how easily you'll get offended, but by how much you will still do your best through the help of Christ to love people back anyway. Amen? Isn't that why we draw to this God and to this Jesus? Thank you, God. Do you know how many views we have that are different than God? Do you know how many false, even when we are Christ followers, do you know how many false beliefs we still carry at God at times? Do you know how often we still have resentment towards God at times, even when we do love him? So God gets it. And he loves us through it all anyways. I still accept you. I'm still here to cover you. I will be your God. I will be your father even when you're yelling at me. I will be your God even when you blame me and I had nothing to do with it. See, he loves us. He pours this love on us. So let's be people. God's not saying you can't, that your feelings don't matter, that your hurts don't matter. God wants you to give your hurts to him. But he doesn't want us to be ruled by our hurts. He wants us to be ruled by love. And then number 3, speaking of love, are you cultivating more offense or more love in your life? As you live this life more, do you find yourself more offendable or more loving? And what might you do if you're like, man, yeah, it's been quite a bit lately. It's been easy to take offense. What might you do this week or in the coming weeks to grow love for others? So, as Pastor Steve comes out to lead us in a final song, guys, this is so important. Like I told you at the beginning, like the pastor said, being offended is inevitable. So it's going to happen to all of us, and we're going to be hurt, truly hurt, and we're going to have to give that to God. But living offended is a choice. We really can gain freedom from offense. And so one of the things we like to do around here, especially knowing that we live in a fast-paced world, is to give you a gift for a couple minutes to actually think about, God, what do you want to say to me in my life about offense? Is there someone in my life that I'm viewing poorly or treating poorly? Have I been circling around it too much? Have I been living in it? So before Pastor Steve plays this final song, why don't you guys take a moment or two to connect with God and ask God. This could be a good time, if you're comfortable, to bow your heads and close your eyes. There's nothing weird going on with closing your eyes. It's just a way to focus. But talk to God. He's not here to shame you for your offenses or hurts. First of all, he wants to comfort you in your offenses and hurts. But number 2, he doesn't want you to be controlled by those and live in those either. He wants you to live in love. To have that be the guiding force. So why don't you take a moment or two just between you and God, and then Pastor Steve will lead us.